with us. This event, as you hopefully know, is brought to us today by Business and Technology of Greater New York, BTGNY. We're a meetup group in New York with about 2,600 members, but most of you already know that. The purpose of this event and these events, we normally do fireside chats, but we're now doing a webinar given the pandemic. And it gives us the opportunity, however, to engage with more speakers. So we're excited about that. The purpose of these events is to engage business and technology leaders of Greater New York or St. Louis or Providence to discuss their management and technology best practices and opportunities. BTGNY, as you know, is sponsored by X Matters, Brooklyn Winery, and Elementary Brewing Company in Hackensack. Unfortunately, they can't share their products with us today, but they are with us in spirit. Again, if you have any questions you'd like to ask our guests, please use the chat function at the bottom of the Zoom screen and type them in at any time, and we'll get to them during the Q&A portion at the end of the panel. With that said, let's get started, and I'll turn it over to Arwen.
Great, thank you, David. So my name is Arwen. I am the fourth member of BTGNY, and I'm happy to be with this group today. We have this a great event. We have a great event for you today. We have three great speakers, three great panelists. And we typically try to get panelists that are in different industries, in different industries and different parts of the U.S. typically too. And today is no different. So I'll start off with so just a quick intro. So we have Sharon, who is our chief strategy officer and head of global partnerships at AT Crossing Company. We also have Mark, who's the president and CEO of Orthopediatrics. And then lastly, we have Atif, who's our managing partner at Mazars, and he specializes in cybersecurity. So we have a great, well-rounded panelist for you today. And we're looking forward to engaging everyone. At the end, we have a Q&A session, as David said. But I will start off. Let's just have a quick round of introductions. Maybe we'll have start off with Sharon. So ladies first, can you just kind of briefly introduce yourself?
Well, I think you already did, but yeah, my name is Sharon Bunton. I am brand new in the role he just described, having joined June 1st. But I have spent my entire career in luxury goods. I have never had. It's my first time ever working for an American company. I've never had an American boss. I've never worked for an American company. I've always been in an international environment. So yeah, I'm happy to join and to meet you all. I've known David for some time, but was happy to have a chance to meet you all and do this, albeit digitally.
So it sounds like a fun job.
Wish you were here in person.
Yes.
Sorry?
We wish you were here in person, all of you.
Thank you.
I love luxury goods, so that sounds like a fun.
It is.
All right. How about Mark? Quick introduction.
I've spent my entire career in the medical technology field and have worked for a couple of large multi-billion-dollar corporations as well as smaller, more rapidly growing companies. About a third of my career has been spent living and working outside of the United States, first in Tokyo when I ran Becton Dickinson Japan, and then for 10 years I was CEO of a publicly traded British medical technology company. But for the last 9 years, I've been a CEO of a rapidly growing late-stage startup called Orthopediatrics, which is the only company that is focused exclusively on orthopedic surgery for children. And we make implants and the instruments that are used to affix those to the bone or to put those inside the bone. And these products are used to correct severe traumatic injuries, deformities of the legs and arms of children with cerebral palsy, scoliosis, and also sports medicine related injuries to the knee.
Great. Wow. Sounds incredible and wealth of experience in healthcare there. So looking forward to hearing about that in a couple of minutes. Thank you. So lastly, we have Atif, who is the managing partner at Mazars. So Atif.
Hey, so Atif Gari, I'm a tech enthusiast with a focus in cybersecurity. Been in the cybersecurity field for 20 plus years. Grew up in consulting, worked at companies like IBM and Unisys, and then also went onto the other side at Comcast, where I led some product engineering in regards to security at Comcast. And then I met a guy named Robert Hujebek, who you may know from Shark Tank, and went and worked for him for several years as CTO of the Hujebek Group, getting into cybersecurity services, and which leads me to where I'm at now. At Mazars, we're a global top 10 professional services firm, and I lead the cybersecurity practice for that. And I'm sitting in my home in Philadelphia.
Great. I just want to quickly interject something. I think it's fascinating that we have such a diverse panel here in terms of what you do. All of you, whether it's cybersecurity or healthcare or luxury goods, all of these industries have been impacted in so many different ways because of COVID-19. And I know we'll get into some of that today. So I think it's really great that we have such a nice balanced mix.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure, Tiff, you probably get sick of people asking you how is it working, with Robert. So we won't ask that.
Well, the short answer to that, Arwen, is that I do get asked all the time, but he's exactly like he's on TV, like humble guy, down to earth, plenty of Robert stories, but yeah, just like on TV.
Awesome, cool. He seems like a nice guy. All right, so why don't we start it off? Ladies first, Sharon. So I was reading your reply to this, and I thought it was such a great response. So, everyone has someone that impacts them in life. So question is, do you have a person who's had a tremendous impact in your, as a leader and maybe someone that's been your mentor or person that's impacted your life? Would you mind sharing, if there's someone like that in your career, Sharon?
With pleasure, yes. I have to say, other than my father, who I would put first, I did have a gentleman who was truly my mentor, and with whom I am still in touch, interestingly. At the beginning of my career, I've had two parts of my career. The first part was very entrepreneurial, and the second part much more corporate. But in the beginning, right out of college, I formed a consulting company where I helped French companies who wanted to start up in the US. In other words, their companies were formed, their businesses were active there, but they weren't doing anything here. So there was a gentleman who was one of my clients under that little umbrella. And they had a company that supplied, their client was the fragrance business, okay? The gentleman was named Jacques Bourgine, and he was the owner and CEO of the company in France. And he definitely had the most influence on my perception of being a leader. He had been my client. Then when we sold that business, the consulting business, he took me on as the CEO of his American company that I had started up. I was very young to have had that title.
Yeah.
And it was almost like, are you serious? But yes. Okay, so he named me to be the CEO, and we started on, and he never treated me as if I was his daughter, which honestly, I was the age of his children.
Right.
I was never bashful about asking questions, and I guess he appreciated that. And always treated me very much like an equal and matter-of-fact answers, never like, oh my God, you don't know that. I was very comfortable on the sales and marketing side of the business, but the whole financial and manufacturing side, I had no experience. So he taught me all about P&Ls, taught me how to prepare to negotiate credit lines with banks, how to vet potential factory acquisitions we did, how to tour a factory and decide if we were worth bidding on or not. both in the US and in Brazil, and to be eventually responsible for managing those facilities. All did this somehow while never making me feel like I was a junior green startup kind of person. He always communicated in that tone, and we are, like I say, still in touch. So as a result of that, gentleman, Jacques, I called him Professor Jacques, not to his face, to the family. I've always taken the opportunity to return that favor to all and any young people that I've had the opportunity to work with. I'm a big believer in bringing on interns because they have fresh ideas and they don't know what's wrong. And so they're not afraid to express it. And I think one of my, thanks to his example, one of my best accomplishments in my business life is having helped many others to grow with whom I still stay in touch. And that's, I mean, it's great to make the bottom line. It's great to close a sale, whatever. But that's a very personally satisfying thing. And so I responded to this question because that guy really set the bar for me. And like I say, we're still in touch.
Oh, that's great.
It's great because it sounds like obviously there's something that he saw in you, a potential, and a lot of it you were essentially learning, you know, on the job.
Totally.
Yeah.
I knew all the client-facing stuff I could handle, but the rest of it I was learning on the job, and I guess he thought I had the capacity or the curiosity, you know, to do that.
Right. And I like the fact when you mentioned about the interns, because I was speaking to an executive at HP, and what he does, he actually calls reverse mentoring. He'll have interns or someone that's like a millennial kind of mentor him on like the latest technologies. What do people like now, or what are people using and how are they using it? So I thought it was really interesting about reverse mentoring. Yeah.
I actually, if I may add just one quick thing there.
Sure.
When another startup I did, Links of London, formed, you know, they were established in the UK, but I started them here. I hired 3 interns from Parsons and 3 interns from Columbia Business School. So it's to get the right and the left side of the brain.
Yeah.
And to do the work I had to do because I was only 2 hands. And that was just great, that combo. And they learned from each other, obviously.
That's interesting. That's a great compliment. Tiff or Mark, is there anything you want to add?
I had a very similar experience very early in my career with the individual who hired me, who was general manager of a medical division at Mallinckrodt Group that I started my career with. And I think it was from him that I saw leadership modeled. And this guy, Tom Gutschall, exhibited loyalty, both to me and my loyalty to him, loyalty to all of his people. He had a manufacturing background and was an engineer, but was extremely empathetic with a very high degree of emotional intelligence. He treated people with respect. Tom was very selfless in terms of the way he handled himself, extremely honest, brutally honest at all times, had a great sense of integrity, and always had some sense of purpose. There was always a plan. And while that was early in my career, I was astonished about 7 or 8 years ago to be seated in a box at the Army-Navy game next to the commandant of West Point. And there was a little jumbotron, you know, between the floors of the stadium that kept showing these letters, LDRSHIP. And I turned to him at one point and said, do you know what those letters signify? And he said, those are the features of leadership we teach at West Point. L is for loyalty, E is for empathy, D is for duty, R is for respect, S is for selflessness, H is for honesty, I is for integrity, P is for purpose. That is our definition of leadership. And I was astonished to tie that back to the very virtues that Tom Gutschall modeled when I worked for him.
That's great.
Boy Scout motto, all the different loyal, thrifty, reverent. I'm trying to, that was a long time ago. Those
don't hold up in the business world as much, though, as you know, these sometimes they're called the military virtues, but I think in particular, what is interesting about those features is they can be modeled by the guy who sweeps the warehouse floor, is they can be modeled by the CEO. They apply to everyone in the organization.
Right. So Mark, let's stick with that theme. What would you say are some of the most important decisions you make as a leader in your organization?
I guess I focus on only a few things that I guard very jealously. The first of those is the strategy of the business. The second would be the culture we create in the business, which is the most important asset that a business has, in my view. The third would be the people we hire. And the fourth would be telling our story, our communication to investors or to the outside world. When it comes to operational matters, those must be delegated to the men and women who are running our businesses. I'm incompetent to do anything more than be a reflective listener and sort of ask questions. But with regard to strategy, culture, people, and communications, that is what I would do. So I try to create a context by which we can make decisions. And in the rare case that we're at loggerheads, I do have to sometimes cast the deciding vote. And there was an incident a few years ago where we decided to go to the mat and defend ourselves very aggressively in a patent infringement suit brought against us by Stryker, a company hundreds of times our size. We've spent several $1 million on that suit. And I think it has demonstrated to Stryker and the industry, as a little company, we're not going to get pushed around. But that was a very personal decision I made by sort of drawing a line in the sand, because there were guys in our organization that felt we shouldn't do that. We ought to just try to settle. And there were others that felt we ought to go to the mat with these guys.
Yep. And if I could add in there, Arwen, on that
Please.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's the context, especially as technology leaders, the concept of measuring twice, cutting once, versus measuring once, cutting once, right? So there's a different types of decisions. And in technology, speed is everything, right? And how fast you can go, grab market share, win customers. And there's the relevant times to think a lot, measure twice, cut once. And there's relevant times where you just have to go. And I think as professionals, as we develop ourselves, we like to try to strive for excellence, and the product has to be 100% before we ship it, or relatively speaking, versus 70%, 60% is good enough oftentimes. And so that of figuring out as a leader what type of decision follow into which type of categories, and then making those decisions based on the stage, I think is the hardest part, because obviously they have their impacts.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's those are like the balances they kind of have to make constantly, right? It's dynamic. So let's just get the elephant in the room out of the way. Right now, obviously, we all are going through the COVID-19 pandemic. Can you share with the audience how your company is currently, operating and functioning during this pandemic, and what's been most challenging for your organization, in your opinion, and also the third part is what are you pleasantly surprised about, this whole pandemic, and what didn't you expect? So maybe,
I might comment on that if I could.
Yeah, please.
In mid-March, elective surgeries began to be canceled everywhere in the world. Mm-hmm. 2/3 of our products are used in so-called elective surgeries. These aren't tummy tucks. These would be a scoliosis surgery, which will progress month by month in terms of deformity, and it must be done, but it does not need to be done like a trauma case. So about 2/3 of our products were impacted. And after a January and a February where we saw 30+% revenue growth, in April, our sales were 60% below what they were a year ago in April of 2019. But fortunately, we realized we had the cash reserve to be able to make it through a scenario that was anticipating a prolonged sales reduction of that magnitude. And also our capital commitments, both this year and next. And so we, right off the bat, assured all of our employees that their jobs were secure. We were not going to cut their salaries. We established a distributor relief fund for 167 salespeople throughout the United States so that those distributors could draw low-cost loans that did not need to be repaid to us for some years. So we tried to stabilize the organization. And we decided we would carry on as much as possible in terms of announcing a major acquisition that we made in April, continuing to build our inventory so that our supply chain of the 9,000 products that are in our 35 surgical systems, those would not be interrupted. We carried on with regulatory approvals around the world, with sales training. And interestingly, we did not cut our ridiculously large contributions to surgical societies, where we give more money than Johnson & Johnson and Medtronic to the leading pediatric orthopedic societies, at a time that those companies cut their contributions, in certain cases, totally. So the bottom line here is that we try to use this COVID pandemic as an opportunity to grow stronger at a time that we saw that our competitors were cutting people, were cutting salaries, were cutting expenses. And I think we're going to emerge from this crisis even stronger in terms of competitive advantage than we entered it.
That's great. I mean, it sounds like you were really been planning, and you obviously planned well for quote unquote a rainy day. And, you know, this will give you kind of catapult and gives you the way to kind of hopefully get, you know, in front of your competitors.
Well, it was not brilliant planning, because I don't anticipated this, but by dumb luck, we had raised $80 million in December of last year. And so that gave us the kind of cash resources that had we not had, I'm not sure we would have been able to be so noble in our mission or so aggressive in trying to continue to build the company as if COVID never happened.
Right.
So how did you raise those funds, Mark?
Pardon me?
How did you raise those funds?
We had a secondary offering.
Okay.
We went public in late 2017, and then we did a secondary offering a year after that, and this was the second secondary offering. And in fact, we did take advantage of the favorable markets and did a third secondary last month and put another 80 million on the balance sheet because we just did not see, we had no confidence in the way this whole COVID pandemic is being managed in this country, and anything is possible, I think.
Yeah. How about Sharon? How about the luxury goods? I mean, that's got to be, you know, really, I mean, industry to be in, you know, with COVID and, you know, people being able to purchase, you know, goods and especially on the luxury end of it. How have you guys been?
Yeah, the whole industry has been impacted seriously.
Yeah.
The retail traffic obviously is down. Brands like Lululemon or like that are doing fine because, and their online sales are actually exceeding their retail plus online this time last year, because maybe you have a nice shirt on, but maybe you're wearing your sweatpants down below. So, but luxury goods, on the other hand, they've been severely impacted. I joined the company where I am now on June 1st, so we were well into this already, okay? And I am in the office now, but they're the only people that were here for the last 2 days are the 4 members of the executive committee, because we decided it was time to, you know, to come together at 6 feet apart with a mask in the hallway.
Right.
As far as, you know, from a business perspective, I have to say that, well, we didn't have the 80 million little windfall like my colleague, but the expression I use is that being on the edge, as tough as it is and as demanding as it is, does improve the view, right? You walk along the edge of the Niagara Falls or whatever, and you got a great view, okay? And being on the edge like that, when you have to make very difficult decisions, interestingly enough, it really forces a triage of the to-do list and of the priorities in the business. And that, I think, is actually a silver lining to when you're in a crisis time like this. So that's one thing I think we've learned, or we are experiencing, I should say, during this time, because it is indeed a challenging time. But that having been said, we've also been able to think about, okay, we have, this company sells writing instruments, manufactures writing instruments that can be personalized. And these days, I mean, you should carry your own pen. So, come on, right? So what can we do to promote, we did hashtag carry your own pen, and you can personalize it and so forth and so on, all right, for instance. The other thing, we all have time now, that maybe perhaps more time than we usually do, to be contemplative. And there are very few things, I mean, one line I really want to pursue is this idea that there are very few things that last a lifetime. Very few things. And if you take, if you do memoir, it so happens this company has a lifetime warranty on their products, so that kind of plays into that. But it's also this idea of expressing yourself, taking the time to be contemplative, to write, and to take time. So, there's been some nice things to come out that are not monetary contributions, but hopefully can contribute to the emotional well-being of others, sharing thoughts like that. And from a business perspective, like I say, being on the edge does improve your view.
Right. That's great perspective, and you really have to think outside the box, in times like this. So, Tiff, how about on the cyber side, or like just on the technology side? How have you guys been kind of coping with COVID?
So I wake up every morning pre-COVID with the FUD factor: fear, uncertainty, doubt. I mean, that's the nature of the cybersecurity world. Is in that, and especially now, it's just snowball down the hill, right? And just given remote workforces, the ability and the anomalous nature of the types of attacks that are happening. I mean, every day there's a new one. So from a business perspective, it's, there's a jump in the amount of activity, the amount of help that our clients need, that like firms ours, we deal with and we support. And it's just only going to get deeper because the digitization of businesses now are forced to being put there. I read a really interesting or funny, interesting post recently that just gave me pause to this question of who in your organization is responsible for digital transformation? A, CEO, B, CTO, C, COVID-19, right? It's either you are or you're not, right? And if you're not generating revenue, or you are in serious trouble. And I think the acceleration of this pandemic is impacting the digital world. And I think 5 years from now, it'll be a lot clearer. Definitely 10 years from now, if you don't have that digital strategy, if you're still living on paper and in the offices, it's disintermediation time. And so some of the things that I have some initial thoughts on where we are today and where we're going.
It's interesting because everyone knows the digital revolution is coming and it's here, but who would have thought something like this would accelerate, or this is what kind of triggered the acceleration of that, good or bad. I mean, it's here, so we have to figure out how to get out of it. Right? So just sticking with you, Tiff, can you tell us top 3 kind of like business and IT priorities that you guys had planned, beginning of this year, and how has that kind of changed because of this, pandemic we're in?
Yeah, so from a business priority standpoint, I mean, just not just from my professional services, cybersecurity business, but just across the board for all the folks that are here on the meetup, it's really simple, actually. It goes back to our old adage of you could have something fast, cheap, or good, pick two, right? And every now and then you can have something cheap and fast, but it's not good, and etc. But every now and then comes along something that gives you all three: cheap, fast, and good, right? And that is automation, right? So that's the trend. So automation of everything, right? You'll get all the benefactories of it, and tying that back to your key priorities for your company, whether it's reducing cost or whether it's increasing customer satisfaction. So the trends we're seeing, not just at Mazars with our professional services firm, but with our clients, is the acceleration of getting things automated and having robotics processing happening in every level. Every type of business is primed for automation. Just the other day, I paid, you guys probably do it all the time in New York City, but I was at a beach, and I actually paid the meter, added time to the meter from my phone, right? And so that's not only digitalization, but also the automation of doing that and having the productivity levels that now have changed for the folks that are actually monitoring that. So the game is even changing for parking meters, right? In a New Jersey beach.
Right.
So going back to your question, my top three would be automation, and more automation is the driving factor to help across the board.
Awesome. How about you, Mark? Has you guys pivoted?
What certainly has changed in our top three is that while we had identified last December, we wanted to develop a mobile app in this COVID world and post-COVID world, where our sales consultants who normally attend surgery and who help direct the surgeon as to how to use our systems, these guys won't be able to attend as many cases. Many hospitals are now closed to non-staff members. And this mobile app, which we tried to accelerate the development of, would enable a surgeon on his iPhone to be able to dial up a training video or the surgeon technique guide literally as he is walking into the operating room, to be able to brush up on how to use this technique. And one of the things that we've also accelerated is the development of a telemedicine system of a very high resolution camera and various audio hookups. So we can have people remotely attend that case and advise the surgeon during the case as to the tips and tricks of how to make the case go better, even though they may not be there physically.
Great. Sharon, any thoughts on that, or?
Just that I think, like has been expressed, that this has accelerated things that were inevitable. In the retail world, it's very much a shift to all things digital and e-commerce. There are much of that was inevitable. Internally, if companies have to deal with fewer people in the office, the automation and digital access to all information and shared platforms becomes all that much more important. And we've upgraded in the process because that need became all the more obvious.
Right.
Yeah, so like I said, I think the changes that are happening they're accelerating, definitely. But they were there, they were inevitable. They just are happening quicker now.
Yeah. Right. You know, as an IT professional myself, and we're always trying to figure out how do we add value to the business and to management. How do you think IT can do a better job of making top management aware of how IT is adding value, and what can IT do better in adding value there?
Me?
Yeah, please.
I love this question. I think it's a great question because of three things, I guess. First of all, having been at a company where the systems were lacking, big, respectable organization, but systematically, oh my God, it was such a manual scene. It was unbelievable. I came to have an appreciation for all the services that the IT team does for a company because I didn't have it. You know, it's one of those you don't know you miss it until you don't have it kind of situation. And I must say with all humility that my appreciation for all those services and abilities increased dramatically while in that role. So I think there is an improvement that they can do, especially in a situation where it's a shared services. You know, I've been part of groups where it's a holding group and then there are many brands in the group. That's how it is mostly in luxury, in which case finance and IT are shared services. And in that shared services, like warehouse and supply chain, in that shared services environment, lots of times the individuals are not even recognized. You know, you speak to a help desk or you speak to, I mean, it's a kind of a generic situation.
Yeah.
So I think, I love the question because I think they could definitely add value to the perceived value of the IT department. And how do you do that? I don't know. So they're not taken for granted. I think what you have to do is maybe quantify, dollarize the value. Because we have this system. If you didn't have this system, how many more customer service people would you have to have?
Yeah.
If we didn't have this automated order entry, how many more order entry people did you have to have?
Right.
If we didn't have the shared platforms for quick analysis and Power BI and all this kind of stuff, how many more times would the field team need to travel to HQ? I don't know, maybe we need to quantify that, and there should be perhaps, just like we do for the sales team, you know, at least monthly has an accountability report that is value driven. It's dollars. Or in social media, it's how many more likes you got or whatever. There's a way to measure. And what the IT departments do and what they add to the business is enormous.
Yeah.
And I think it needs to be quantified, and yes, it should be part of a monthly reporting, but you have to find a way to quantify it.
Right.
And dollarize.
It's always not easy. It's not black and white, unfortunately. Right?
No, I think the way to do it is how many more people would you have to have if you didn't have this?
Yeah.
One thing, you know,
Right.
but I think it's a very valid point. I think it should be a part of every management meeting, and often it's not.
Yeah. How about Tiff and Mark? Any thoughts on that?
I'll jump in. Go ahead, Mark.
No, please, Atif, you're the expert.
I'll say that, but I'll tell you this, right? I don't think if I asked you to raise your hand, I think every one person in this virtual meeting will raise their hand that does their business want to reduce cost? And we are living in an unprecedented time of technology innovation, cloud computing, and scale, right? So not only is it going to be cheaper, but you could do, instead of doing 100 widgets, you could do a 10,000 widgets, right? Potentially. So I think it's back to your question of like, what's the value? How do you position technology? How do you sell technology? If your CEO doesn't get it, he'll get, I'm going to reduce cost substantially, and I'm going to move a lot faster if I can embrace new technology platforms. I think the challenge is on us as tech leaders that we need to be able to communicate that value, right? And position that, hey, if we do AWS in the cloud, which is jargon to a business person, if you do this cloud computing thing that you read about on the plane, it's going to mean X, Y, Z to our production line, to our cost savings, and then you'll get the attention, right? So the onus is more on us IT professionals, is to explain that value better, because all leadership, we were living in this time where the world is going to cloud, and that's the reason why is because of cost and the scale.
Yeah, it's so true.
I had an interesting experience today that's apropos of this, because I conducted the 360-degree feedback session on the head of our IT function. And several of my colleagues who were on this call observed that if it weren't for Justin and his foresighted dissemination of great technology throughout our company, we couldn't have continued to make progress. We have all working remotely, where complex products are being designed by engineers who don't see one another. They're interacting with surgeon advisors who are looking at these models and whatnot remotely. Our communication, of course, is required, and we have a disparate selling organization that is now, you know, very much dependent on the daily sales reports that they get from the IT function. So this guy's knowledge of our business and the department needs, plus his knowledge of technology and how to marry those up, have really been quite seminal.
So I certainly have a lot more questions, but I think I want to, you know, open it up to our audience to give them some chance to, because I know that I see there's a bunch of questions that they want to ask. So David, do we have any questions from the audience?
Yeah, we do. You know what? I think we could do one more for the
One
group.
more? Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, perfect. Because there's a question I think we typically ask our panel and guest speakers. Question is, when you're faced with, so there's a lot of our audience members are, you know, managers and directors, and they hire, you know, candidates. So when you're faced with two equally qualified candidates, how do you determine whom to hire? So I'll start off with Sharon.
Okay, this does happen with some regularity. I'm assuming this is a direct report, for instance. Okay.
Yes.
In that case, I think I really, if it's a key position in a direct report, I usually try to find a way to interact with them outside the office. I mean, they come, they're prepared, they're dressed, they're sitting there. I want to also go have a coffee with them before I make the offer, or interact with them in a networking situation somehow, because people's emotional intelligence is very hard to measure in a strict office interview.
Yeah.
I use the term emotional intelligence. I know it's very common, but you do see a lot of the body language, their way they interact with others other than you. I think that's important. The second thing that to me is most important is I look for somebody who might have a strength where I have a weakness.
Yeah.
Okay? Because if they're a direct report, they're going to be part of my team. And I look to hire people who are very strong in areas where maybe that's not my favorite thing.
Right.
Okay?
Fill your gaps, right?
Yeah, that's the second thing. And then, of course, I just value very much their curiosity. I don't care how shy they are, personally. I really think they need to have some curiosity, if not about the role, then maybe even about me personally, or maybe about who their colleagues will be. Some questions, other than the truly show me some curiosity.
Yeah.
And maybe equally qualified people, and one isn't very curious, I can't go anywhere with that, you know? So those are the three things: my own weakness, some emotional intelligence test outside the first interview setting, and then thirdly, to make sure they have definitely some curiosity.
Great. I think those are three great advice. Tiff or Mark, any thoughts?
Yeah, given a choice of two equally qualified candidates, I would go for style always. And in order to get at that style, I have found that what is very helpful with interviews is not to interview someone by myself, but to have someone else there. Overwhelm the candidate, but to be able to pose, I call them behavioral questions. Like, why did you study XYZ in college? Tell me about a challenge you've confronted in your career. Tell me how you handled difficult colleagues. And it's an opportunity to pose questions, but then to have someone else pose questions and watch. But be that as it may, style to me is absolutely as important as, call it competency or technical ability to do a job.
How would you define style, Mark?
Well, style would be the way you go about getting work done. And in fact, we have a little practice in our company where everyone has a 6-month review. So every 6 months, but half of the review is how they have gotten things done. Their style, the first half of the review, is what they've gotten done. And, you know, I think it was Jack Welch who so articulated that oftentimes the hardest thing to do is to get rid of someone in the organization who's a great achiever, but who's a bull in a china shop in terms of their style. It can be like a cancer that eats the core of the company and its culture. So style and accomplishment go hand in hand in my book.
And I like to add on to that. I like to use the term the athleticism. I like to pick the strongest athlete.
Yeah, that's
So
good.
looking at your communication skills, your writing skills, your interpersonal skills, you know, you could find someone that has the skill set in blah, but how well can you communicate that, articulate that, and teach that, and train that? It kind of goes to the point made earlier. The strongest athlete always wins for me. And you know, just one fun thing that maybe you guys can all try during an interview. I love to ask this question, whether it's definitely even when it's not a technical type of interview, is you know, if there's a whiteboard in the room, give them a marker and say, draw the internet and explain it to me. You'll get all sorts of answers, right? You know, some guys will get really super technical about TCP/IP, and others will be like, oh, this is Sally, and then you can learn about how they communicate, how they think. It's one of the things that I always like to try to do if there's a whiteboard.
It's interesting.
Right. So is there right or wrong? I mean, how they communicate like the internet, or it's just really how to see
Behavioral
how they
question.
really think about it?
Yeah, it's like a social thing, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a behavioral question. Yeah.
Those are
Oh,
great.
great.
Well, thank you so much. That was great. I wish we could go on. Let's get to some questions. We have a bunch here. There's an interesting one for you, Mark. It's not really a question. It's an anecdote. Jeffrey Scott here caddied for Jack Welch when he was a dumb kid. Super great guy. LOL. I'm going to sort of mix these up. Here's one that just came in. This is to all three panelists. How do you see COVID impacting the diversity and inclusion disciplines or departments within your organizations and others that you're putting in place or not? How do you see COVID impacting the diversity and inclusion disciplines or departments within your organizations?
Well, I'll take a stab at that to the extent that our little company is located in Warsaw, Indiana, which is literally in the middle of cornfields, but it happens to be sort of the epicenter of the orthopedic surgery products business in the United States. And it's very hard to recruit women and people other than white Anglo-Saxon Protestants in Warsaw, Indiana. But COVID has really forced us to recognize what I think we've been coming to conclude several years ago, that we can recruit people nationally. They never have to move to Warsaw because we can interact with people now so effectively in this kind of virtual way, and then they can travel to Warsaw from time to time. So it's enabled us to conceive of being able to attract a far greater diversity than would be found in a farming community in northern Indiana.
You're not in Warsaw right now, I take it, Mark.
I'm in St. Louis now, where I live.
I know, Mark and I are from
Living in Warsaw, even though I have a condo there that I've used for 10 years during the week, and then I come back with my wife. And other than boating and playing golf, there isn't much to do in Warsaw.
True. Sharon, how about you?
I can't really speak to that. Like I said, I just joined June 1st here.
Sure.
So they do have, it's a global company, okay?
Mhm.
So by definition, it's very diverse because we have branches all over the world, okay? If you're speaking specifically about this particular office, this is only, I came for the first time yesterday. So, and there's only 6 people here, and the people I'm meeting have been all on the screen. So I really can't speak to that, except I would join in his comment about there's a much more openness to working remotely, which broadens the recruitment base, which is cool.
Mhm.
The company does have a very diverse mindset as far as talent management because because of this global presence. Okay, so that's a good thing. But I really can't speak to it much more than that. Sorry.
Good. We'll get you on our next panel. Atif, how about you? How do you see COVID impacting the D&I discipline within, and you're also a worldwide organization. Any comments that you would want to share with the group?
More of the same, right? It's more of the same. So we're a global company, 91 countries. So that we've always embraced that. But I think the point Mark brought up earlier about the labor arbitrage, like trying to get people from different zones, different types of diversity, different ethnicities, the talent pool has opened up. And I think it's very clear across the board that you can be productive remotely. And so that totally opens up the workforce, particularly for women as well. And it's, one thing we're seeing is the work from home model for obvious reasons is being effective. So it's more of the same of what, I don't want to just repeat what everyone else said, but we see the similar thing.
Gotcha. Here's another one for the three of you. What are some of the things happening at your firm that you're aware of? Again, Sharon, to the extent you can answer this question as well, since you're new. But what are some of the things happening at your firm to identify and help employees who have mental health issues or, stress, fatigue, anxiety over COVID? Those either who have been asked to come back into the office, or even those who are still obviously at home, because a lot of these factors are impacting people at home.
Yeah.
Atif.
Yeah. Also, really quickly, I know we're running out of time here. It's just employees first, right? People first, being sensitive, just having that theme starting from our firm CEO, me as a managing partner across the partnership, it's people are first. And so case in point, I mean, many of us, male and female, are regularly home with our kids and managing the kids. Because I'm waiting any moment for one of my four to run in and go get a piece of paper or something, because it's the new normal. And so accepting that, putting that first, and understanding that, hey, I can't work normal hours anymore because of the way my personal life is, and embracing that, and instead of the way that would have looked at pre-COVID. I think that's probably the cornerstone of our treatment of how we're working with our employees.
One of the things that we decided to do on March the 16th, which was the beginning of everyone in the company working remotely, is that every associate in our company would receive a personal telephone call every week from a corporate officer. And so our HR VP has been circulating little telephone assignments for my 8 colleagues and myself. And we will touch base. We'll reach one of our associates every week. And we also have a town hall meeting. Initially, it was every week, every Friday morning. Now it's every other week. And during that time, it simply is a way that we can all reassure one another that we're all together here, that we can maintain good communication. It's not that we talk about stresses associated with COVID, but I think it helps the fact that this is now getting old, because it was a very important part of our business, and people enjoyed being together in the office, and they can't do that anymore.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Mark. Do you guys do it over the phone, or is it a video chat?
Either.
Okay.
I prefer doing it video, but sometimes people are in their pajamas and don't want to be seen. Then it's a phone conversation.
Right.
It's nothing about business. It's just to ask how their family is, how they're doing, and then to pick up on things they might say about their work and projects they're working on. And it's just a question of connecting with people.
Sure.
We have time for one more question, and a bunch have come in, and I don't think we're going to have time to get to them all today. But what I would encourage you all to do who are participating today is reach out to, I should get their permission first, but I assume it's okay that if people on the panel today reach out to you via LinkedIn and connect if they have additional questions that they would like to ask you. Some of them are pretty specific. There's one here actually that's pretty specific that is addressed to Sharon. Let me just pull it up here. I have to scroll to the top. It's one I'm curious about too. Sharon, do you feel the luxury goods market will be as impacted by the continued recession as would be the consumer goods market in general. With the Fed inflating, do you expect luxury goods to rise more or less than some consumer staples?
I think they are definitely affected, yes. And do I think it would be more or less than consumer staples? By consumer staples, are we talking toilet paper and like that, and groceries, or are we talking?
I think I was reading the question verbatim. I think the question is, what opportunities maybe are there for luxury goods? Where do you see AT Cross? You've been in this industry pretty much your whole career, gifting luxury goods, et cetera. Where do you maybe see AT Cross landing on the other side of this?
No, I think AT Cross specifically, I think this, like I say, which is why we're kind of talking about lifetime, things that last a lifetime are few.
Mm-hmm.
That's one advantage luxury goods has. When I first started working for French companies, I suddenly realized that, oh my God, I could buy a Chanel jacket that costs a fortune. But I had it forever and it never went out of style. Mm. Okay, that's a mindset. And that's an advantage luxury goods have, quality, right? So I think that the market will narrow. I think only the best will survive. But I think that there is definitely, they're not going to go away. And I think that appreciation for quality and things that last may come out of this as a positive for luxury goods.
Yeah, and one more comment I would add to that is that you've seen, you're right, on an emotional level, it's always, in any environment, it's about staying relevant. And so the emotional cues that you're playing on right now with the, with the pen that lasts forever, and what was the hashtag again that you had mentioned that you were using? Yeah,
no, I think it's very important to do that. But retail in general is going through a big thing. And then we have this thing, you've been quarantined. How many of your clothes have you really worn? Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, and shoes, who's not in flip-flops?
Right.
So it's the industry will be hit for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's why Apple's putting out a cheaper watch right now and a cheaper iPhone. I think you can stay within the luxury category, but I think we'll see more and more affordable luxuries. Mm-hmm. Again, we're going to wrap it up now. I wanted to thank everybody, the panelists first and foremost. You've all been great. It's also great to catch up with you personally again, Mark and Sharon, and to meet you, Atif. Any of you in the audience who, again, would like to submit questions, we had a few more here, but we don't have the time to get to them. We're being sensitive to everybody's time. Please reach out to either Atif, Sharon, or Mark via LinkedIn. And we'll be posting this online soon on YouTube, as we do with all of our events. So if you missed any of it, or you'd just like to go back and refresh, we'll have that out shortly. I have nothing left to say. Arwen, do you have any parting words? And then we'll wrap it up and call it a day. Or a night.
Just want to thank Atif, Sharon, and Mark so much for being with us and sharing some of your thoughts. And thanks to the audience for joining. And if if it's okay with the three panelists, if the audience members can reach out to via LinkedIn, or they had some questions that we couldn't get to, that would be excellent. And I hope everyone stays safe. And at some point, I would love to meet everyone in person, and have a drink together. So
yeah,
that day will come soon.
One of our next events will be a physical event back in New York. We'll have to fly you out for that, Mark.
Yeah, David, why don't you show us your pub I always see you in?
Oh yeah, so we do happy hours at the agency that I work for, and let me just go to that really. I can't do that.
And I got a kick out of your comment when you were opening, saying that the sponsors, they're not there, but they're with us in spirit. Was that like a
Yes.
No pun intended. Right. Pun intended.
Right.
Sharon's in marketing and communication. We're on the same team. I can't seem to, wait, no I can, yeah, hold on. So let me just quickly show you my pub here. Some of you have already seen this before. It's my new virtual background. Ta-da!
There he goes.
There you go.
So
That's cozy.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so the
Yes.
pub,
Very cozy.
the
Very
pub will be
cozy.
open on, the pub will be open on Friday for our usual happy hours here at the agency, so. Thanks again so much. Also a special thanks to Deepak and to Bruno, who are part of the BTGNY team. Everybody be safe. I was gonna say get home safe, but you're all probably at home, so we'll skip that. Have a pleasant evening and we'll all catch up soon, I'm sure.
Okay.
thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you much.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Bye, guys.